And welcome everybody to my channel. And it's been about 500-600 kilometers since our last review on this motorcycle. I said I'd bring a slightly more revised and detailed review of this motorcycle. So I'd like to begin by saying that after 600 kilometers on this motorcycle, which is pretty recent, has allowed me the opportunity to mention one or two things that I might have forgotten on the previous review. So namely 2 or 3 things that were missing on the motorcycle. So we'll begin with the negatives. The one thing that I noticed, and I didn't bother to let you know because I was excited with the whole purchase, not to mention the fact that I had many other things on my mind, but also to say that I hadn't had sufficient experience, hands-on experience on this motorcycle to be able to talk to you about it like I'm going to be doing now. So the 76 horsepower that I mentioned earlier on was correct. It's possible that it's 72 on the wheel. But getting back to the negatives, I spoke to you about 1 or 2 seals that were not well, including the fork seals which showed indications of cracks, which is not good, but I suppose for the age of the motorcycle this kind of thing happens. The one thing I've completely neglected to mention was the fact that the Honda sticker was not here, so obviously this bike might have been dropped and then had to go for a respray of some sort. At least on the fairing side. So the fairings, the plastics, have certainly been redone. At least that's the indication I get from this side here, because the sticker is on the side here. So but back to the technicalities. The tire on the back is a lot better than I thought. The front wheel is also a lot better than I expected. Perhaps on the center of the wheel the groove is not as big as I would like it to, but you know, for a second-hand motorcycle, this wheel is actually in a very, very good condition. The crash bobbins, didn't mention anything earlier on about them. Well, there they are. Those are signs and an indication of what truly happened. So the previous owner might have got scared and decided to put those on as a result of what happened. These scuff marks here indicate that you can't see them there, can you? There we go, just on the side you can see a little here. Those are obviously marks of the possibility of them having been scratched, but I don't think those were on the floor. Normally when bikes fall on the floor, these are also damaged. This could have been damaged, but I don't see any damage like that at all. No damage on the handlebars either. So interesting, it must have just been a little cosmetic damage, but nonetheless sufficient damage to cause them to get scared and put those bobbins on, which I personally think they pretty clumsy. Right next to a hooter that hardly does its job. I'm gonna have to replace that one somewhere along the line. Doesn't really function that well. I'm yet to get the light, as I said I would, but I have to say that and one of the last negatives about the motorcycle was the brake pads that were fitted here. As you can see, they are new. I had no idea they were new, and as a result I started pressing them a little harder than I should right from the beginning. And now I have to mention the reason for that is because I came from the NC's and VFR's habit of having the dual braking system, which becomes second nature if that's something that you've had on a motorcycle. In other words, when you use the brake, the rear brake of the motorcycle, the front brake activates as well. So it's just one of those habits that you got to get used to. So okay, so other details, other negatives that I found, apart from the fact that, like I said, it was a little bland. The sex appeal lacked a little bit of excitement. It lacked a little bit of flair, but that's something that I'm sure once I add a sticker there will certainly regenerate or bring back to life the boring status of the motorcycle. All right, the chain, immaculate almost, a little stretched. As you can see, it's almost at the end there, but after cleaning, you can see that that is in almost unused condition. Well, not unused, but it's certainly very good condition for a second-hand chain. And sprockets, almost zero wear and tear on that. And of course, the shock is the one thing that I noticed was the setting was a little too low. If you look over here, the space was all the way down, making it for a slightly more comfortable ride, but on corners it led a little bit to be desired, because I'm not a very fast rider, but I enjoy leaning a little, and sooner or later I'll be leaning more than I should, so I'd rather have a slightly stiffer suspension than the condition that it was in, the position that it was in earlier on. The other thing I've managed to confidently say is that this fairing, as small as it may look, the design of the whole side panels here, in fact the whole fairing has been designed to really neutralize that wind. But more importantly, look, I'm not the tallest of blokes. I'm about a 1.70 m with boots on, so make that 172, 73 or something. And it just missed my helmet halfway. So my shoulders were pretty covered. My helmet was covered till about halfway. So the fairing certainly does do a good job. I was very impressed with it coming from the NC. The NC, you just get buffeted left, right and center. So there's no comparison. I know there are modifications you can do to the NC, which should eliminate that problem. But you know, on a bike of this nature, where high speeds are a little bit more easier to achieve, it's important to have a fairing like that. I've never understood how guys prefer nakeds. If anything, if there's going to be a naked, that it be a naked of this nature. So some kind of protection. The engine can be open, just like as in my SV650 that I had in the past. It was also open and accessible, but the front fairing is, to me, imperative to have. If anything, if you don't have a top box or panniers, then at least have a fairing. That'll make your life so much more pleasant at high speeds on highways and other roads where you'll be traveling at over 100 kilometers per hour. So yeah, the other thing I can add to finalize this this video, because these are just details that I couldn't answer at the time of my first video, is the back brake. Like I say, a little disappointing once you've had the kind of braking power that you've seen on the VFR and NC. The SV650 that I had in the past, to be honest, I don't really remember. But I do know that to compensate for the lack of braking power this back brake offers, the engine braking certainly does help. So unlike the NC, especially the DCT, where you leave the throttle and the bike just carries on going. So here that doesn't happen. You let the throttle go and it certainly slows down. So maneuverability, fantastic. At one point or another, I noticed that my back tire pressure wasn't correct, and that I happened to I think it's losing air. It could be the valve. I'm not sure. The valve seems fairly new. I have pulled it left and right to see if there's any cracks or noises. Nothing's happening there, so it doesn't matter. It's not a puncture, but there is certainly losing a little bit of air, which I have to admit, guys, if you're on a motorcycle and you want to take corners safely and at a decent speed, if you are going to be leaning, your suspension has to be set properly, and more importantly than anything else, your tire pressures have to be absolutely spot on. So food for thought. Like I said, my adjustment on the shock, I've stiffened it up 2 notches. I think Listen, I'm no pro, I know Rossi, I don't even pop wheelies on this thing. But I do feel a lot more comfortable on it, despite the fact that it has hardened the suspension a little. What else can I say? And of course, finally, I mentioned that this bike needed a service. Now, previously, when I looked here, all I could see was darkness to see what was happening to the oil levels. And the truth is, it was so dirty, this part of the engine, that to me, in my opinion, it needed oil, but you know what? It didn't need oil. In fact, the oil filter might be needing a change, but even that looks decent, but the oil is certainly not in need of a change. So no need to change the oil, no need to service anything. I looked on YouTube to find out where the air filter on this motorcycle is, which can, if you take this screw out, you've got 3 more screws. Once this panel comes off, inside there are 3 more screws that you remove, and the air filter comes out, and that looked pretty clean as well. So this to say that the motorcycle did not need a service. What it needed was to be run. And 500 and odd kilometers later, if you look on my date of my first review of this motorcycle, you will see that this bike was probably standing for a long time, and this is exactly what it needed. It needed to be opened up, it needed to be driven, or ridden rather. And the awkward position that initially, because if you look on stats, on paper, the seat versus the foot pedal there, it's a bit of an awkward position for a tall guy. But for me, it's just perfect. I thought it was going to be uncomfortable, but it turns out after 200 kilometers, you're still okay. The seat, like any motorcycle, eventually it gets a bit hard, but I think I prefer that. It just creates a sense of control. It just offers you a sense of control over the motorcycle that you wouldn't get from a very plush seat. This is not a cruiser. This is a sports tourer. Apparently they're not so popular anymore. Everybody wants either a naked or a super bike or a cruiser. I sincerely hope that the sports tourers are not going to be a thing of the past, because if they are, I'm just going to be buying them if I can and keep them, because they become a rarity. Everything else, lights, I was concerned about the color of the motorcycle and not being seen on the road. Apparently that's not true. Somehow they are seeing me, so the only light that was working on the motorcycle was certainly sufficient, which is on the right. I'm yet to get that globe. So bottom line, everything that I'd mentioned earlier on, I now have answers to, and I want to thank the guys that helped me navigate around the transaction with my NC700, and I have a lot more confidence on this motorcycle now. Like I say, it's very, very clean. Everything is, apart from the back disc story that I said I wasn't uncomfortable with the amount of braking power on that disc, but considering you have all the rest to go for you, there's no reason why you shouldn't brake in time or even an emergency without ABS to do a good job of coming to a standstill. So Honda, well done once again for a fantastic vehicle. I've joined the CB600F FB page internationally to see who's riding them and who's not. I see a lot of women riding this bike as well, and apparently not everybody likes to push the limits on this motorcycle, and that's why they get this one. Unlike the CBR owners, that we all know what CBR owners do with their bikes. So you got to be careful, I think, when you buy a CBR 600RR, a lot more than you would be with this particular one. So CBF, yes, perhaps the ugly duckling of the CB designs, but as a whole, what you get in return is certainly worth every cent. So Honda, thank you, and once again for bringing a fantastic motorcycle in, to the public. I don't think they're manufacturing these anymore. The new CBs are very expensive. I'm not going to even go and discuss those details. You can go look them up yourself. But for you, those of you that have the option to access one of these, don't hesitate, get them. Like the NC, I've only had good things to say about the NC, apart from the highway speeds and the wind protection, which most people obviously complain about, and it just didn't have the street cred that this one does. So from that point of view, I'm a lot more excited. I do miss the frunk. This one hasn't got a frunk, it's just got a tank. I think it's a 20 liter. I'm not getting the mileage that I was getting off on the NC, of course, but we got double the cylinders going here, and obviously the consumption from 140 kilometers per hour onwards just disappoints a little, but that's the nature of the beast, I suppose. The more cylinders and the more high revving the motor is, the more you're going to use, the more fuel you're going to use. So there we go. Thank you guys for coming on board. I appreciate you coming and supporting my channel, and I shall be bringing lots more stories. Sorry about that, loud pipe passing by. I'll be bringing a lot more videos on this motorcycle, particularly in the area of visitations. I'll be riding with everybody and going to see good places. So again, once again, thank you for coming on board. Appreciate if you can like the video. To me, that makes a huge difference, and I want to thank all the subscribers. I've got a couple new ones again. That just makes my day. I really do appreciate it. So God bless. Have a wonderful day, morning, evening, wherever you are, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheerio. Bye bye.